Good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the Magic Mile New Hampshire Motor Speedway, placed host to the second race of the season for the Dark Horse Racing series of the F.A.R.T NDCar series, as we're getting set here this evening for a much different race from what we had last week. Last week, it was Auto Club, where we had speed, we had strategy, we had drivers having to have the ability of finding the draft and the slipstream. Here today, though, it's going to be about tires. It's going to be about not hitting the wall. There's a lot of stuff to unpack for this race just based off what we saw in practice. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez. And Matt, they got that first, we'll call it super speedway type race out of their system. Now it's kind of the ND cars going short track racing in a sense.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. We went from the high banks of Michigan where we were pushing about 240, 250 even, and now we're going to the very, very flat corners and the short straightaways of New Hampshire where it's extremely hard to pass and downforce and kind of that clean air means everything. I'm looking at this race and like what we saw in practice, it seems like a lot of drivers kind of on that edge. We can't really, it's I guess maybe the best way to explain it is you're not going to be pushing 100%, but who can ever push more than the other guy is going to have the advantage here.
Well, last week we ended up seeing J.W. Miller go coast to coast, pole to win at Auto Club, a track that wasn't nearly as much about track position as today at New Hampshire will be, but he's on point again here alongside of Matt Wagner. So, J.W. Miller, what do we think? Maybe a favorite to double down win the first two races of the season?
I don't know. Obviously, you have two very different track types. The only consistent has to be the car. So, I'm really wondering as we go forward if it's really going to be, hey, he has the mastery of the car, or if he has the mastery of the track.
Take a look here at our starting lineup, brought to you by 4D Racewear. Got, I believe, 21 cars, if I correctly counted before they went to qualifying, that are going to be taking the green flag here this evening. And 150 laps, 150 miles for these drivers, as you mentioned, going to have to pace themselves here today. And sun's been baking this mile racetrack as well. So if they were having trouble finding grip off the corners just at the racetrack itself, the weather conditions are not going to do them any favors.
Yeah, and you may be looking at that track temps like, oh, it's 97 degrees. Oh, it's a nice 70 degrees out. That doesn't matter. It's the fact of the track's almost 100% or 100 degrees, and we're going to be going in and out of these corners with very limited grip, hot slick right fronts, especially lighting up the right rears with that V10. I would heavily expect at least once or twice in this race we're going to have a spinner probably out of turn 2 or turn 4 just because, hey, it's just a combination of a hot racetrack and hot tires.
Correction on my count, 25 drivers going to take the green flag for this one, and I think there were only about 7 or 8 drivers last week at the conclusion of the season opener that had their faster pairs still available. I have a feeling here today there may not be that many cars in the field that are going to have that faster pair available if we end up seeing them kind of go over that 70% effort mark that we were talking about. Saw a lot of drivers in practice try and force the issue. The car unloads in that very flat banking off of turn 4 onto the front straightaway, and a lot of cars were spinning out and hitting that inside wall. We'll see if these drivers are ready to pace themselves as we are green here at New Hampshire.
Oh, right in the front of the
already
field!
we're wrecking. Oh my gosh. That was, I believe, the outside pole sitter, Matt Wagner.
That was Matt Wagner, and man, what I think happened there was just beginning of the race, cold tires, slammed on it, and unfortunately, just car got a little bit squirrely, and off it went.
Those rear tires had absolutely no grip when he mashed the throttle. A couple of drivers that were stuck behind him. For the most part, it looked like everybody got away with relatively slim to no damage. We'll go back and look at the replay. Maybe fortunate that that took place right at the very start of the race when everybody wasn't yet up to full song.
And looking at it, it looks like Wagner started in third, and he spun the tires in third. Man, these engines, these engines are crazy.
Right at the very start, very lucky that that actually didn't sweep up the entire front row because that number
Looking at
3 turned a dead left, hooked a dead left there.
Eric Schaus looks like he broke the right front suspension off of that. I think he's probably going to need a fast repair at the minimum.
And I think he's the only other one that was collected up in that. Everybody else either was able to stay up on the high side, or if they were on the bottom, they got in the brakes quickly enough. Boy, dodged the proverbial bullet right there with only 2 cars involved. That could have been a lot more.
I would say luckily, or more or less unluckily for Eric Schaus, he was the only one involved. He did a great job getting on the brakes, making sure he didn't come right back into traffic. And it looks like Gary Corley got just a little bit close to that right front. But looks like everything was all hunky-dory with that.
Going to see if we can get an onboard with Eric Schaus to show how quickly it happens. Absolutely no reaction time here as up through the gears they go. And you mentioned about Matt Wagner starting in 3rd gear. With this onboard with Schaus, we can see he actually started in 4th gear. So this is something we're going to have to keep an eye on with upcoming restarts as well, as we have these pacing laps, the tires cooling down. We know about the slick track conditions. I mean, these guys are going to have to be aware not only once they get up through the gears, but even prior to that.
And I'm just kind of looking at this where, obviously, this is amplified now because we have double file restarts. So this has the potential to happen again. But obviously, I'm going to tell you, after something like this happens where it's on the first start of the race, even before we hit the first lap, everyone in that field is now looking, and they're just going to take these restarts just a little bit easier. Because everyone doesn't want to be that guy who ends up spitting out on the start-finish. And it really sucks for Matt Wagner. I know he's a talented guy. It just, unfortunately, I think he just didn't practice the restart.
Well, Wagner, up to this point, has not yet used a fast repair. He is back out on the racetrack. It looks like all drivers are still running an on the lead lap, but 2 drivers have used their fast repair, Eric Schaus and also Glenn Lazon. I didn't see the 69 Gulf-sponsored machine involved, but
I think the caution got extended because the 13 or the 17 of Thomas McConnell was stopped on the front straightaway, but I think he was trying to let the lap cars around.
We got a couple of cars that are making their way around the pace car there, remain on the tail end of the lead lap. And we should maybe get the lights out next time by and get doubled back up. Obviously, the first race of the season last week, point standings are going to basically shadow the finishing results from that race. J.W. Miller coming in the points leader, 12 points over Eric Schaus, who was involved in that first caution. Craig Forsyth, who I believe, I'll have to look again, but I don't think he's in the field tonight. He was 3rd in points, and then Jeff Hysong, Joseph Morales tied for 4th, 21 points back. And no, there is not a 27 car sighting, so that's a driver that was up there in points that's going to take a bit of a free fall and have to try and gain those spots back in 2 weeks' time at Phoenix.
I can tell you one guy who's definitely kind of had a little bit of a success here at New Hampshire. At least he's been in the top 3 before. Look back to last season at New Hampshire. Charles Teed finished P3. I think that was one of his best finishes of the season. But also our last season's winner, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, he's currently mired back in about 15th. Looks like he didn't set a qualifying lap. Started P18. I think that actually may have been for the best for him. He avoided the opening calamity, but now he's got to work his way through the field, and New Hampshire is not one of those tracks that it's very nice to pass at.
Oh, I think we may be calling an audible here and not doing double file restarts. Everybody here single file up against the wall.
It could be a league rule after, if we have a caution within a certain number of laps.
That's true. That is true. I think you're right. I think if I recall correctly, that was Charles T that was spinning the tires there from 2nd position.
Spinner,
and we got a caution again.
Spinner, Peterson, there's another car around. Oh my
goodness.
Up
on top of another car, and then someone just flew over that pile of cars.
DL Lemon just cartwheeled in the turn 2. My
Jim
goodness.
Brooks, Najee Camargo's in this. I believe Christopher Bryan. We're focused on the 51 of Jim Brooks, who was a couple of seasons ago, had a very good run here at New Hampshire. Had a good battle with, I believe it was, who was it? Robert Mileska III.
Man, I just looked at Joe McAdory, and McAdory had a car flying over him when he was trying to avoid the wreck. Right now, at least it seems like these first two corners are the battle of attrition. It looks like both of these accidents were related, though. Looks like Eric Peterson maybe gave a little bit of assistance to Carmago in the 59.
And it looks like almost the Jim Brooks follow-up incident. He saw the car coming up the track, was trying to get on the brakes, and then whoever it was behind him spun him around.
Now, what in the
Couldn't
world
pinpoint
happened
who
to
that
D.L.
was.
Lemon?
We'll look
Because
here in
he
a
went
minute.
somersaulting into
We're gonna
this.
first focus on the Eric Peterson contact, and then we'll go back and look at Lemon. Oh, yeah, just sent it in there, did Peterson.
Yeah, I think he expected him to roll the corner just a little bit better and just popped him in the left rear and just sent him on around. Peterson did a really good job just keeping it located on the bottom of the track, but obviously.
All right, DJ Lemon, let's see what happens with the Bitcoin car, number 08.
Oh, he ramped over him.
Wow, he did. Oh my gosh.
My goodness. The moment that got airborne, it just, my.
His right front making contact with the left rear of the car in front of him, which I think that might have been Nicholas Winook.
Honestly, that's not what caused. I mean, it launched him up in the air, but then he ramped off of Jeremy Reed, off his right rear.
Wow.
And that's what sent him. My goodness.
Look at that. Well, you talked about it last week. These IR01 cars.
They're
Even the slightly bit of contact, the wrecks can be very theatrical. And I think that's a case in point right there.
Never a dull moment, but obviously a tough break for Lemon. Looks like he's pulled it behind the wall. He's called it a day. Same thing for Jim Brooks. Jim Brooks also pulled behind the wall. He is done.
Najee Camargo's sitting on pit road. He's 3 laps down, still getting repairs done to his machine. And Nicholas Winook, you see him on the inside line there. He is 1 lap down in 22nd place as restart here. Completion of lap 10. Lap 11 goes on the board. Let's see if these guys can get themselves into a bit of a green flag run here. Somebody coming out on the track. That was Najee Camargo completing his service, taking on his faster pair. But he is now 4 laps down. Somebody's around back there.
Looks like it was Charles Teed. Got a little bit squirrely off of 2, but did a good job recovering the car.
Wow. He just exited.
Oh no! Big wreck in 3.
Joseph Morales, Brad Yonkman.
Luis Gonzalez Nunez was in it.
Also Christopher Bryan, Joe McAdory. I believe Jeremy Reed's collected up in this one.
My goodness, are we going to have any cars left?
But when I said, it looks like the leader had to traverse his way through the junkyard up there in 3 and 4. But when I said that we may end up exceeding the number of faster pairs used this week as opposed to last week, I didn't expect that we might be entering on the brink of that before we even got to lap 20.
I mean, right now we're kind of playing the survival of the fittest and the battle of the attrition. It's whoever can kind of keep themselves in the best shape possible. And it looks like...
to start with Nunez?
It looks like it was Joseph Morales sending just a little bit hot.
Oh, yeah.
In the 3. That's a bounced off of Luis Gonzalez Nunez. Nunez did a really good job not pounding that car in the wall harder, but obviously big contact still. And behind, they just keep stacking up.
Top 5 run last week at Auto Club. It's interesting because you mentioned this before we came on the air, that drivers are going to have to be a little bit tender in how they approach the entrance to the corner. And I wonder if, because of that, certain drivers, they're having much earlier lifting points that others behind them are not aware of.
I think it may just be the case of, it's one of those, the reason that I always love to kind of practice in a pack, and I like to do mock races, at least in practice with a few guys that I trust, where it's at least I can see how the car races in a pack, and I can kind of get used to it. But that comes with its own risk, where you're not really prepared to race against other guys because, hey, maybe the guys you've been racing with, they're all friends. You all drive the exact same. They're kind of used to your braking points. But what about one guy who, hey, he lifts a lot earlier to get a really good exit?
Garage area is filling up very quickly.
Yeah, it looks like Luis Gonzalez Nunez, he's pulled it behind the wall. Same with Matt Wagner. He's called it a day. Joe McAdory, same thing. Jeremy Reed. They're piling up.
And an interesting thing too that I was noticing on that last replay, when you had a number of drivers, 2, 3 drivers spinning up to the outside wall, you get on the brakes hard with these race cars, they go up to the outside. You get on the brakes hard with them, and you can't turn to the bottom. It's like the thing just goes straight. There were about 3 or 4 other drivers that got collected up in that incident because they couldn't turn the car when they got on the brakes.
Yeah, what I'm thinking what's happening is they're kind of jamming on the brakes. So when they jam on the brakes, they're locking up those front tires, and unfortunately, with really these, oh, I almost said the bad word. With these cars, unfortunately, when you just kind of lock up the brakes, it just goes straight. It's not like maybe a GT car. It's not like a stock car or anything else like that, where it'll give you that opportunity to kind of let off and let it catch again. Unfortunately, with these open wheelers, the moment you lock them, you're just kind of along for the ride.
So far, 14 laps complete, about to complete the 15th lap, and we've only run 3 laps under the green flag up to this point. 3 cautions have flown. Right now, by last count, 15 cars running on the lead lap. We've got, I believe, 18 cars that are out there on the racetrack right now. Joseph Morales still listed in this race, but on pit road after he had to call a tow. And that's another thing, too, that we saw even last week at Auto Club. The hits that these cars take, when you lose a tire, it's very difficult to drive that thing back to pit lane. If you're missing both front tires, then there's no choice. You've got to call a tow. And with the fact that it is a mile racetrack, more than likely you're going to lose 2, maybe 3 laps before they even start to finish up the tow and begin repairing that car.
Yeah, I mean, if we liken this back to the DW12, the DW12 didn't have the new damage model, and it seemed a little bit higher up off the ground, where it wasn't as pretty much dependent on ground effects and everything like that. But with these new cars having a new damage model and the wheels popping off, and unfortunately with the cars being a little bit lower to the ground, it's just once we lose that wheel, we are unable to limp back around, and it's something that these drivers will have to adjust to. You think it would make them a little bit more cautious, but
J.W. Miller, I think he's been fine with leading all these laps under pacing. Gonna get
car in the
himself
wall. Christopher Bryan.
Eric Schaus going around the outside there of Christopher Bryan. We're 3 wide through 1 and 2, but I think they all make it through, pointed in the right direction. Now the caution is out. It's for Thomas Shannon McConnell on the back straightaway. Like he might have been the only one. There may have been contact with another car, but only one car was facing in an incorrect direction when our cameras panned back there. I see the Christopher Bryan car on the apron though, so might have been him after he had his moment over in 1 and 2. Let's go back, take a look.
Yeah, I'm just looking here. Oh no, it was not. Oh, it looks like it was the 17 of Thomas Sharon McConnell.
I don't think he hit anybody.
Yeah, no, it looks like just a little bit on throttle, just a little bit of hesitation. Car comes on around, did a good job keeping it off the fence. Everyone else did a good job of keeping it off him too.
Yeah, clipped the grass with those left sides. I think that left rear probably did a lot of spinning in the grass area there.
And
Directed the car back up right in front of about a half dozen drivers.
And here's where it will start to act a little bit odd, since these kind of drive a little bit more like F1 cars in the old open wheels that we were used to. Since really these tires are heavily dependent, especially with all the power and the downforce that are going into these cars. The moment that you get them on a surface that has less grip or has a different amount of grip, almost think of like a grip modifier, that has a different modifier value than the actual track itself, it will end up spinning the car around automatically, even if you're off the gas.
Just looking now at that incident you were talking about with Christopher Bryan going up into the wall there in turn 1. It's almost like that thing never turned, like something might have been broken the right front.
I don't. Maybe. Honestly, that's a little bit of a weird one for me.
It was, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe if he just misjudged the corner, didn't know how to enter it.
Well, he's on pit road. He was already, I believe, 1 lap down, and he's back on pit road getting damage repaired, especially to that right front tire, the right front wing. He's going to fall yet another lap down here, and that'll drop him to 17th on the running order.
So I guess maybe we can kind of go through here and pick out some of our unsung heroes at the moment. Definitely an unsung hero has to be Shreddy and Raid. Kind of started P11, ended up working his way up to P5. Looks like he's kept his nose clean, kept the wings clean, kept the tires clean of all these incidents. He's in a really good spot here to try and make a charge. Same thing looking back here. Looks like Charles Teed. I know Teeds have a lot of issues getting off, pretty much fired off the line. I'm not sure if it's more or less just the same issues that everyone's having right now, where it's a lot of just rear end grip struggles, or if he's trying to figure out the best way around some of these cars and some of the corners.
Wanted to see these guys go into a long green flag run here, just based off the fact that at 31 of Will Roberts, he's been picking up a spot here and there on these restarts, rolled off the grid in the 5th position, and he was very fast, very consistent laps in practice. So we know that J.W. Miller.
I see some of these drivers warming up their tires. I'm not really sure if heat's the issue.
Yeah,
I don't know.
On restarts, maybe.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's the heat that's really the problem here.
We know New Hampshire is a very low banked racetrack, so there's not a whole lot for these drivers to be able to lean into when they head into the corner, and they're going in at speeds upwards of around 130 to 140 miles per hour. And we saw even with some of these replays, you get on the brakes and it's almost like the car wants to push up. I really didn't notice anybody willingly going down below. You can see kind of the difference of asphalt there, the light gray and then in the corners and then the dark gray up top. Everybody was kind of straddling those two specific areas of the racetrack there, much more up on the high line than running on the bottom.
Yeah, what I think it really is, it's kind of an evolution of what we used to see here at New Hampshire, where there was this one dominant line, everyone kind of ran it, but there is kind of that flip-flop in between. But now I think a lot of these drivers are trying to unlearn what they had previously and are trying to adapt more to what we're racing now. Looks like we had a car high in the wall. Don't know, was that Matt? No, it was Gary Corley. Looks like he ran a little bit high. Looks like the front tires are still in good shape. Looks like we have another car running up high.
Brandon Gates.
Oh
gosh! Winook was that Winook? No, that wasn't Winook. Who was that? Brandon Gates just ran over somebody or got run over. Someone flew into somebody else there.
Looks like it was Carmago on the 59. And it was just a thing, it looks like it actually may have gotten kicked off from Eric Schaus, may have given a little bit of assistance, but unfortunately, it looks like Carmago kind of committed to that high lane, and unfortunately, how the entry was, it wasn't just enough room to dive down.
Let's take a look at it here. Brandon Gates, the white and red car on the top, and there's the contact up and into the wall, and oh wow.
Gates has not had a good 2 weeks.
No.
At the moment.
No.
Been bad fast, but unfortunately just has not had the results and has not had the consistency to really kind of show for it.
Brandon Gates, of course, was battling for the lead last week at Auto Club, made some contact, had to take on a faster pair, fought his way back up into the top 5, and then got caught up in another incident.
Looks like Brandon Gates is going to lose a lap here.
He's on board with the 76 of Brandon Gates. Watch right here. Here's the contact up into the wall, and then here comes Camargo. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't think Carmago had anywhere to go, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it was already committed to that high line, and I think if you slam the brakes there, you're just driving in the back of Gates. Obviously, I think there could be obviously a little bit more checkup there, but I don't really think slamming the brakes would have done any good here.
We had some good battles that were going on prior to that yellow flag. A good three-way battle between Jeff Heisung, Will Roberts, and AJ Hobson for second place as Miller had checked out. Obviously, being the control car, he gets that advantage. And then Charles Teed and Sheridan Wade, they were mixing it up for the fifth position. So I saw a couple of drivers attempting to make passes down that inside line. But one thing that I was observing when we were following the Teed-Wade battle for that final spot inside of the top five, we already know struggles with rear grip, even on the top side, coming off of 2 and off of 4, but it looks like that loose sensation is exacerbated when you're on that inside line. Like Teed, he's almost like drifting flat sideways coming out of turn 2 a couple of times when he was on that inside line of the battle.
Yeah. I'm just
Oh,
looking
got some
here.
connection problems there for the race leader, J.W. Miller. Looks like it's settled out.
You know, if you want to give a shout out to someone, look at Will Roberts, P3. I
And
haven't
he
seen
was
him
the
run.
fastest in practice. Had the fastest lap in practice. J.W. Miller was top of the board for about 3/4 of it, and then I looked up and Will Roberts was up at the very top of the board over Charles Teed, and J.W. Miller got knocked down to third fastest lap in practice.
I don't know. Will may have something for him today. Obviously, with the field being a little bit thinned out already, I mean, I think it's really anyone's game here.
Will Roberts tied for 10th in the point standings, 33 points out, had the 10th place run last week at Michigan. I've been realizing I've been saying Auto Club, the sister track. They were in Michigan actually last week. And in 2 weeks' time, these drivers will have an off week next week. 2 weeks' time, we're going to another track that's not exactly well known for banking, especially over in 3 and 4. We'll be in the desert at Phoenix. So almost kind of a lot of the elements that they're dealing with here today, the hot conditions, the low banking, they're going to have to deal with that same thing in about 2 weeks' time, just on the other coast.
The one thing that really scares me about Phoenix has to be that transition going through the dogleg. I'd be really worried about that cut down. I could see a lot of cars spinning off from that transition.
Now, Pace Car has led the most laps here today. He's going to hit pit road, and he'll
Hard day's
turn
work.
it back. Yeah, exactly, right? Earning that paycheck. J.W. Miller gets us back under the green over Heisung, Roberts, Hobson, and Wade. And look at...
Oh my goodness!
Was that
Almost.
Hobson 3 wide looking there into turn 1? He won't get... Actually, correction, he is. This is for second because you've got the 76 of Brandon Gates in between the leaders in this battle for second, 1 lap down.
Oh, car in the wall! Looks like it's
That's Gates again.
Oh, it's Gates.
No, that was Gates. He's a lap car that was intermingled with the lead lap cars up here at the front. Three-way battle now for second. Heisung having to check up as he thought about shooting up the middle here into 1. Looking ahead at this side-by-side between Hobson on the bottom and Roberts on the top. And Hobson clears going into 3.
I can just see
Now
everyone
Charles
back
Teed
in the
enters
pack.
into this mix.
Everyone back in the pack. You could see the differing levels of confidence that some of these guys have in their cars, or some of these guys are really confident, almost diamonding the corners, entering all the way on the bottom, going all the way to the wall, back down, and you just see some of the guys taking it so gingerly through the corners. I'd say give them about 20 laps, you'll see some confidence raise, you'll see some confidence fall.
Wow, riding on board here with Charles Teed, and I clenched up there going into turn 3. He almost ran into the left rear tire of Jeff Heisung, sent it into that corner. Heisung had to check up for Hobson, and again, almost some contact between those two coming off of turn number 2. Just look at the speeds these drivers are carrying into the corner. One thing I am noticing here, though, not a whole lot of counter steer out of this 5 car coming off at the turn, so maybe they're finding a little bit of grip. Maybe they're just being a little bit easier on the throttle, but not nearly as much counter steer as I would have expected, as we got a little smoke lingering there on the back straightaway.
It looks like a slow car of Brandon Gates. He is not having a good day. What I'm seeing
he's
here,
spinning off a 4! Right in front
Roberts
of the
is
leaders!
in the wall.
And he's going to come down almost in front of traffic. Everyone avoided him there, though. Whew. was Sheridan Wade, I think, that nearly wiped out the 31. And Roberts got the wall in reaction to Gates spinning off of turn 4. Caution out for the 6th time today. Looks like the 31's going to get his position back with the field being frozen at the time the caution flew.
Trying to look at that car. The first I saw it, its right front suspension was broken, but it doesn't look like it is now, so may have kind of lucked out.
Take a look here. Go back to turn 4. Brandon Gates. Low out of 4. Back end comes around, and oh man, you see right there, actually, not only did Will Roberts get damage getting into the wall, but right behind him, AJ Hobson also got damage. Both cars, kind of the same thing we've been talking about. Hard on the brakes, the car doesn't turn. Both cars went straight up into the wall, and some pretty good damage to the right front tire area of both of those machines.
Yeah, it looks like Will Roberts and AJ Hobson both coming down for pit road now. Doesn't look like there's any other takers. Looks like Charles T thought about it. Looks like some more takers in the back of the pack. But what it seems like it is, there doesn't really seem to be a lack of grip in the corners like we saw in previous seasons, and it doesn't seem like it's that downforce related, or it doesn't seem like that affected by downforce. Now, obviously, we're going to have to ask some drivers about their opinion on this. But right now, it's really the challenge of how much grip do you have and how hard can you get on power. Because these cars really have no shortage of power. They could probably take a lot of these corners. They could rocket into the next corner, but what I'm thinking is maybe they just don't have. It's the battle of grip. What I'm trying to get at here.
It's interesting considering the fact that it's a battle of grip. We've only got the drivers that are running right now. I think only about half of them have been to pit road. We've got, by my last count, looks like 7 drivers that have not come to pit road the entirety of this race. With the fact that we're having numbers dwindling, drivers taking on faster pairs, are you surprised we haven't seen some of these guys up here inside of the top 5 hit pit lane here to maybe try and get fresh tires and have that bit of grip, or do they just not want to give up the track position?
I personally wouldn't want to give up the track position. I mean, we saw what happened to Eric Schaus once he got back there. I mean, I would prefer being as far up in the field as possible, but like we saw with this one, I mean, having a lap car next to you could be even the biggest nightmare, even being up in the pack. So I think I'd cut my losses. I'd just come down, maybe top off, and then just try and ride out the wrecks.
Just took a look. 9 drivers still have their faster pair intact. 7 of them are inside of the top 8 as we currently speak. Nobody out of the race since our last rundown. Najee Camargo got the lucky dog under this caution, so he will now be the only car 1 lap down. Brandon Gates, Brad Youngman, they are both 2 laps down. Christopher Bryan is 10 laps down and still nearing 20 minutes on the tow or potentially just the repairing of the Joseph Morales machine. He's probably just going to try and get out there, log a few laps, because if he can get out there and log 4 laps, he then would leapfrog Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Joe McAdory, and Matt Wagner and finish no worse than 19th in today's race.
One thing I want to note is that I don't think Brandon Gates has any fast repairs left, so any damage on his car, he's going to have to kind of live with it at the moment. It looks like, if my eyes don't deceive me, and they do, looked like he had a little bit of floor damage on the right side, but past that, it looks fine.
It would be correct. No faster pair still available for the 76. The drivers right now that still have their faster pair include the race leader J.W. Miller, Jeff Hysong, Charles Teed, Sheridan Wade, Eric Peterson, Gary Corley, Thomas Shannon McConnell. Those drivers right now all up inside of the top 10. And then Elmer Joseph and Brian Wright, they still have their faster pair available. They'll be restarting in 13th and 14th place as getting ready here for another restart. Lap 38 going to go onto the board. And let's see if J.W. Miller can get yet another good restart.
Caution's out. Caution's out.
It's McConnell. Stopped up on the high side of turn 4.
And it looks like it may have been a miscommunication on driver's end. I don't think he knew where he was supposed to line up, so he parked it against the fence. Interesting choice.
Just now gets it refired. take a look and see. Coming to the green, what happens here?
Yeah, it looks like he just wasn't confident about where you're supposed to line up.
Goes up into the wall there, though. It wasn't like he came to a stop waiting for drivers to go by. That thing just went straight up into the wall, made contact. Hmm.
Yeah, listening in the driver's chat, it sounds like it was a miscommunication, but not exactly sure at the moment.
Isn't
So
on board with
let
McConnell.
me kind of pick your brain here a little bit because obviously since we've had a string of cautions here, you as a driver, hey, you're sitting in maybe Charles Teed's position. That's a you've had an eventful start to the race. You've managed to avoid a lot of this kind of conflict. I mean, how do you kind of reset? How do you get ready to go on? Where, hey, I mean, do you prepare for a caution back to caution, or do you how do you mentally snap back into okay, I need to hit this line. I need to get back into race thoughts.
Well, I think that to answer your question, I honestly think you can't until you're able to get 5, 10 laps underneath you because let's remember, every single one of these restarts is slightly different. You're restarting with 5 lap old tires. You're restarting with 10 lap old tires. Every single time that you turn a couple of green flag laps, those worn tires are starting to have a cooling period under pacing. So you're going into turn one not knowing what kind of grip you're going to have underneath you. It's not going to be the same as it was 10 laps ago. So in the case of Charles Teed and Sheridan Wade and Glenn Lazan, these drivers right now that have broken up into the top 5, I don't think you can have that confidence yet. I think until you're able to get at least somewhat of a run, get an idea of what you've got underneath you, what kind of grip do you have, what kind of a setup in the draft do you have, I think you're still having a bunch of question marks here every single time you send it down to turn one on each restart.
I know with at least me personally, racing at a place like Martinsville where it's so vital to hit every one of the corners the exact same, you need to get into a good rhythm. Being broken out of that rhythm is one of the hardest things to kind of recover from where it's, hey, I'll do 5 laps under pacing. Maybe I'll do like 1 lap or a half lap before another caution comes out. I'll do some more pacing. And then let's say we suddenly go on a 20, 30 lap run. It's that whole entire run. I'm trying to retrain my brain of okay, wait, I need to enter the corner like this. I mean, this kind of feels a little bit weird. Was I doing this before? And it kind of just plays mind games with you.
And I love what you say there, being a rhythm track. I mentioned this last week when we concluded at Michigan that this was going to be one of those technical tracks, but I think rhythm track is the better description of what New Hampshire really is. And I think even next week, or not next week, in 2 weeks' time when we go to Phoenix, that's kind of a rhythm track as well. Granted, both corners, both sides of the racetrack are not exactly the same. It's kind of like a Darlington where it's two opposite ends, but at the same time, your approach into 1 and 2, the first lap needs to be the same consistently, lap after lap after lap. So, rhythm track, I think, is the perfect description here for New Hampshire, and nobody has, as of yet, really been able to get into a said rhythm.
Yeah, and that's one of the toughest parts where it's once you kind of break that rhythm up and you kind of break that consistency. Some people thrive on that where they can easily turn it off. Like, okay, I'm going to pace for a few laps, and they can turn it right back on and just keep going. But for some of the drivers in the field, they just can't do that.
J.W. Miller continuing to have some connection problems there, blinking a little through 3 and 4. We're going to drop back here to the battle for second place between Charles Teed and Jeff Hysong. Sheridan Wade looking on. Ooh, Teed pushing up there off of 2. I think Hysong cut him a break, let him up.
And like I said, look at the lap. It's lap 42 of 150. We've had multiple cautions up to this point. I think we're really going to be starting to cut some guys some slack, or at least we're still in that phase of the race where, listen, it's right now. It's not the time to push. And even though New Hampshire is one of those tracks where track positions, everything. Brandon Gates spins below Will Roberts. He's still on the inside line. No caution.
McConnell also looped it around to the back straightaway. We caught the tail end of that. No yellow flag, however. We stay green. J.W. Miller continues to show the way. The best battle right now is going to be around that 4th, 5th position. Sheridan Wade, Glenn Lazan, Eric Peterson trying to reel in Jeff Hysong. So you got about 3 or 4 of them stacked up inside of this top 5. As you see that smoke lingering there. I think that's McConnell on the inside of the back straightaway.
And man, it really looks like J.W. Miller's having some internet troubles, but I'm looking at Charles Teed here. He's trying to get by the lap car of McConnell, and that's going to be one of the biggest points we're going to point out today is lap cars, lap traffic, trying to navigate lap traffic, because I swear I never catch them in the right place. And it's kind of always the, man, where can I catch them where I'll lose the least amount of time? And unfortunately, it could be a great passing tool, but can also be a big frustration. And keeping cool in this type of race is very, very important.
And the tough thing, too, in consideration of the lap cars, is it looks like just about everybody wants to be running in that upper lane through the corners, which means you got two choices. You can either be running down the inside, where we've seen drivers be really, really loose on corner exit, or right up against the wall. Your options are kind of limited here into a safe area to be able to let the race leaders on by.
And what I'm kind of looking at here at the moment, I'm looking at J.W. Miller's lap time versus Charles Teed's lap time. It looks like Miller's lapping about 0.2 quicker than Teed, but definitely with Teed being under fire a little bit from Song, the same thing with Wade. I'm kind of looking at J.W. Miller, and he's just kind of riding his own. He's at his own pace. It looks like he's happy, and like I said, even with internet connection issues, he's still consistent enough to keep going.
A much easier task as of right now for J.W. Miller as opposed to last week at Auto Club. Granted, he was up in front for a little bit of the start of that race after starting on the pole, but we saw a lot of different drivers take a turn out in front, and Miller had to kind of slowly, methodically work his way back up to the front when it mattered the most at the close, trying to start out the season with back-to-back victories here in the F.A.R.T NDCar series. Good battle here for fourth. Sheridan Wade in the 54, Glenn Lazan in the 69, and Eric Peterson looking on. Lazan was only about a car length off the back gearbox of Sheridan Wade a couple of laps ago, but losing some time.
Teed. And like I said, Charles Teed is catching no breaks with these lap cars.
Got a car coming to pit road. That's Brian Wright in the 79. Unscheduled pit stop, I would assume, for him. It's a tough break there. Brian Wright was running up inside of the top 12, was one of the few drivers that we documented still had his fast repair available, but any pit stop under green flag conditions here at the Magic Mile, you are going to go off the lead lap.
Looking here, and it looks like the field's kind of broken out to a good pace now. Everyone's kind of gotten their own rhythm. I think this is where we're really going to start seeing some drivers kind of come into their own elements. You're going to see who can run the track better, who's got better consistency, who has rhythm, which is the most important thing. And you're going to see those who can kind of conserve their tires a little bit, because obviously we're pushing hard into these corners. We're going from anywhere from 150 on exit all the way down the front straightaway, almost to about 200, and then we're slamming it into turn one, slowing it all the way back down to 130, and then driving back off the corner and doing it all over again. That's going to start to put load on that right front tire.
Can you imagine going 200 into a corner at New Hampshire, of all places?
You know, I will admit, 201 of these, it definitely seems like a little bit less daunting of a task than 200 and the brick of a stock car.
Yeah, fair enough.
Obviously, it comes with its own unique challenges. Obviously, with that nice stock car, you have a lot more weight underneath, where you can kind of put the power down a little bit more. But with these open wheelers, definitely a little bit less weight on the rear wheels, and it's going to be a little bit more sensitive as you start to get back on throttle.
Yeah, a slower car there. One of the lap cars, that was Christopher Bryan, that 4th, 5th, and 6th had to make their way by. We're looking at Eric Peterson in that 6th position right now. Gary Corley behind him by about 0.8 of a second. Good run there for the 7. And just a little bit of house cleaning. We mentioned that Brian Wright was on pit road, unscheduled pit stop, and 17 of Thomas Shannon McConnell a couple of laps ago dove onto pit lane for an unscheduled pit stop. So right now, we've only got 11 drivers on the lead lap. The last of those being the 13 of Elmer Joseph, who had a great run last week. Kind of stayed out of trouble under the radar at Michigan, and doing the same thing here again today.
And I will admit, I'm kind of seeing a name inside the top 5 that I did not expect. And it has to be Glenn Lazan. Definitely did not expect to see him inside the top 5 today. Slowly worked his way through, avoided the accidents, kind of kept to himself, and hey, it may actually pan out to be a really good day for him.
Yeah, I mean, apparently practice, not an indication of the day Glenn Lazan was going to have. I ended up getting an education from Matt last week before we came on the air from Michigan about what these cars can do when they're involved in certain types of wrecks. Well, needless to say, our cameraman couldn't even get the camera high enough in the sky to be able to see Glenn Lazan when he was sent into the stratosphere here during practice.
I'd say his car was higher than my dreams.
I think that's a conversation for another time. On board here with Eric Schaus. You talked about him getting mired back in traffic after he was involved in the lap 1 incident after Matt Wagner spun the tires from the outside of the front row. He's been able to steadily work his way back into the top 10, albeit running 10 seconds behind the race leader, but currently in P8 and about to be under fire from Will Roberts. Actually, this is a good three-way battle right here. Add Nicholas Winook into that as well in the 33. This is 8th through 10th.
I'm seeing Will, he's really liking to push that outside line, but I'm just not sure how much grip there is up there. And obviously with the risk of Eric Schaus maybe accidentally just kind of running a little bit hot into the corner and washing up, I'm a little bit concerned about it.
Catching a slower car up here between themselves and 7th place Gary Corley. I believe that's a 79 of Brian Wright, who we've documented was on pit road a little while ago. He's going to get out of the way clear of the remainder of the top 10. Further up, though, that battle for 4th place, it is still very close between Sheridan Wade, Glenn Lazan, and Eric Peterson. Now, we talk about this being a track position type race and a track position type track. Is there a way to be able to reel in and outbrake or outmaneuver your opponent, or is this one of the tracks where you're just basically trying to hit your own marks and hope that somebody ahead of you makes a mistake for you to be able to capitalize on?
It's one of those, yes, you need to kind of hope that they're going to make a mistake as, oh, we see a car in the wall right in front of Charles Teed. Looks like, oh, he's getting boxed in. Oh, he's pushing a 3. Ooh.
That was, I believe, Morales in the 60 car. But he's going to get around.
It's one of those situations that, yes, you do need to hope for certain circumstances to kind of fall into your favor. However, it definitely doesn't hurt to, hey, let's say you have the guy, let's say you have Jeff Heisong, and he's trying to track down Charles Teed. If you could just be there, you can start to try and psych out the guy in front of you, maybe force him into a mistake where, hey, if I'm hovering about half a second to inside of half a second behind Charles Teed, hey, I can start pressuring him, and hey, if you pressure him enough, he will eventually make a mistake.
Drivers inside the top 5 having to maneuver their way past Joseph Morales, Brad Youngman, Thomas Shannon McConnell. All drivers running off the lead lap at this point in time. The highest of those is Youngman, who is 2 laps down in 13th place, and this interval just continues to grow between J.W. Miller and Charles Teed. I think a good reason for that is, yeah, obviously the 22 is fast, but I think he's encountering this lap traffic in good areas where he's able to quickly put them back in the rearview mirror. Charles Teed's not getting as lucky.
Brandon Gates spun off of turn 2. Looks like he's off the racing line. Looks like we're all pretty good. Like I said, this track takes no prisoners, unfortunately.
Brandon Gates really been struggling today. 16th place, 4 laps down. I mentioned about the fact that Joseph Morales, if he went out there and logged some laps, he'd be able to pick up some spots. He's got another one that he might be able to get as A.J. Hobson. I didn't notice this, but he's now back in the garage area, parked at about 16 laps ago. He is going to finish, it looks like, probably in the 19th position. Morales has got about 16 laps before he would pick up P18.
And I think it's maybe a good idea to kind of look at some of our DNFs, because obviously there's some really good guys here that are not going to get a finish. I mean, Jim Brooks, got to look at him. He usually is a threat when we come to the small short track of New Hampshire. Same thing with Luis Gonzalez-Nunez. He was our last season's winner. Obviously not even going to be placing inside the top 15 today, so that's going to be a huge hit for him. Matt Wagner, we know how dangerous Matt Wagner is. He's not even going to be inside the top 20, or inside the top 15 as well. Same thing, where we're kind of looking back through the field and seeing a lot of notable names just not finishing this race, and definitely going to be a huge hurt for some, but hey, definitely a huge gain for others.
Good battle here. Gary Corley, Eric Schaus, Will Roberts, all trying to make their way around lap cars. And to your point, not only are we going to see drivers that were running well after Michigan last week free fall through the points, but I've seen a couple of drivers that are going to rake in some pretty good points today and move their way up in the standings. The most notable one to me has to be Charles Teed. Right now in second place. Last week, he exited Michigan 12th in the points standings, 34 points out. Now, granted, the driver he's trying to chase down is the points leader, but Teed could be up inside of maybe even the top 5 in points when we conclude New Hampshire today, provided he stays in the position he's in. We got a spinner there on the inside. Caution is out. That was Will Roberts in the 31. Everyone's going to avoid him, fortunately, but boy, that was right in a gaggle of about 4 or 5 cars. That could have been big, and Will Roberts, who was running at the time in 9th place, loops it for caution number 8.
Yeah, what it looks like is Will just got a little bit adventurous. And I was really wondering if a car could actually go down there and make it stick. And I saw Will do it, and I was like, oh man, I think it's actually viable. But fortunately, about halfway through the corner, it looks like it finally got the better of him and just ended up stepping out in the rear end. And that was all she wrote.
Will was another of the drivers I was going to mention that could be jumping up in the point standings. Will was tied for 10th coming into this race in points, and then Eric Peterson was the other driver I was looking at. He was 21st in points after last week, and he's up inside of the top 10. He was 6th at the time that caution flew. Well, we got a bit of a run in there, though, Matt. About, looks like 36 laps, 36, 37 laps right there. So a little bit of an opportunity for drivers to get an idea of what's underneath them now, and might have us with a bit of a strategy here in the second half of this race, which is about 3 laps away.
Yeah, obviously, kind of looking at this, it kind of gives you a few ideas of what you're going to need to go through here. And what I'm kind of seeing here is J.W. Miller has the speed. He's going to win on the speed battle, it looks like, here at the moment. He was lapping consistently faster than Charles Teed. However, what I think Charles Teed could excel at is, instead of maybe trying to match J.W. Miller and maybe forcing himself into a mistake, how about we start playing the long game, where we start working on maybe if we can out-strategize him. Let's see if we can do that, and maybe we can kind of catch Miller not expecting this.
J.W. Miller, first pit stop of the day, nearing the halfway point. And he is the first one off of pit road, so he'll get us back under green with the upcoming restart. Right now, J.W. Miller holds the fastest lap set in this race with a 23.587. Amazingly enough, it looks like there's only 5 drivers that have been able to hit the sub-24 lap times here today. Eric Peterson, Gary Corley, Will Roberts, and Najee Camargo have also ran in the 23s, but they've been 23.9. So J.W. Miller, about 4/10 faster than those 4 drivers with best lap set. Now, granted, I think a good portion of that is he's had clean air. He's been able to send it into the corner without having to adhere to somebody else's braking zone. Everybody else that's in the 23s, they've been back in traffic most of the day.
You know, I'm noticing Will Roberts as P1 here at the moment. Or actually, it may not be. No, it's not P1. He's currently the. He's getting my hopes up. No, it looks like he's currently waiting to get the wave around. But as I'm kind of looking through this, I'm trying to figure out. Obviously, J.W. Miller knows what he's doing. I'm trying to figure out how you could possibly blitz him here on the restart, unless I don't know if we're going back to double file or if we're still at single file restarts. That's going to be the big decider here. If it's double file, you have the potential to kind of catch him off guard, but if it's single file, it's going to be a little bit more sketchy.
So we ended up running 8 cautions here in the first half of this race. That's going to kind of mess up our idea of what these drivers are able to do as far as distance on a tank of fuel. But I'm wondering here, even with the caution laps intermingled, do you think these guys can make it the rest of the way now, since J.W. Miller didn't even make his first pit stop until just moments ago? If we end up going green from here to the checkered flag, or will going to possibly be a concern?
I just heard over the driver's radio, but it sounds like Charles Teed's going to send it. I think that's going to go out well.
I mean, you were talking about how do you get around the 22? Maybe T's got an idea.
I mean, send it, see if it sticks.
Gonna have 10 drivers on the lead lap here with Will Roberts taking the wave around. Green flag about to come back into the air. J.W. Miller, ooh, look at this,
Oh, T
little
got a
line
really good
gaze.
restart.
Yeah, he was waiting on it, and I think Miller was trying to
Sending you?
back him up. Sends it
Oh,
in, it doesn't grip.
but look behind him. Almost a gaggle of cars. Looks like Wade's going to lose a little bit of spots. Look at Eric Peterson.
Eric Peterson gonna get around Sheridan Wade, who's losing a lot of momentum.
Oh,
He's gonna make
Schaus.
contact with Eric Schaus. How did Wade hang on to that? Somehow we get through 3 and 4 without incident, but there was definite contact between the 54 and the 72 for what is eventually the 6th position.
And that's what always happens in New Hampshire. It's really the premium on real estate here. One guy has it, the other guy wants it.
Eric Schaus back up in the top 5, 6th position. Battle might be for 2nd. Jeff Heisong diamonding the corners a lot more. Charles Teed getting a good exit off of the corner onto the straightaway, trying to reel in that 5, and then good battle going on for the 4th spot. That is where Eric Peterson is trying to hold off. Actually, he did get around Glenn Lazan. Lazan's now under fire from Eric Schaus, who sends it into 3.
Yeah, notice Schaus really does send it on entry, but he kind of sacrifices his exit to do it. But what he's doing is he's kind of putting his car in the perfect place to block off any runs. That's great when you have someone who's willing to kind of lay over, but someone who's really trying to push the issue, I could see that coming to blows later in the race.
You know, there's a lot of drivers here that we were used to seeing run in the Dark Horse Racing Series in previous seasons here at New Hampshire, but it was a different car, different setup. I mean, obviously for Teed, Heisong, Peterson, Eric Schaus, these are drivers that we were used to seeing season after season here in New Hampshire, but now you put them here in these IR01 cars, they kind of have to change up their approach to how they race this track. I don't remember seeing Eric Schaus this aggressive sending it into the corner back in previous seasons when we would come here.
And I think that's really the point of, it shows you, A, how comfortable some of the drivers have gotten with the car, where this is really kind of showing you the adaptability of some of these drivers, how confident they are with their machines. And same thing where, hey, listen, confidence is everything. If I have confidence that I can sling a car in here at 200 and it'll stick wherever I want it to be, then I'm going to sling a car in there about 210 and hope it sticks. It's just having the confidence knowing what your car's limits are.
Will Roberts, you talked about him earlier trying the top line, just made a pass around the outside of Nicholas Winook for 9th place, and now we'll try to reel in Gary Corley. Talked about the fact that drivers, they were trying to make passes on the inside line, but either the back end didn't want to plant, or you end up having a much tighter angle, and so you can't get that run up off the corner. Will Roberts might be of the assumption, hey, if you're going to pass them, you're going to have to get them on that right side. You're going to have to take it a little bit wider, a longer way around the racetrack, and oh, he's going to take it a little too wide there. I think he got up into the wall going into 1.
I'm just watching Eric Schaus. Oh, a little bit of contact with Eric Peterson. Looks like Peterson's going to hit
now
the fence.
Peterson's in the wall.
Yeah, it looks like Schaus sent it just a little bit. I am looking at Schaus' strategy, and it does have me a little bit perplexed here. I noticed he was aggressively sending it on that inside lap after lap after lap, and he was really heavily relying on that right front. I'm wondering if that's going to come back to bite him later in the race.
Running lap times pretty similar to his fastest lap of the race. That last time by, he ran a 24.076. His fastest lap in 0.003. This time by about a 10th slower. Yeah, I mean, we know that with the way that this racetrack is, it doesn't matter if you're in an open wheel car or a stock car, that right front tire is going to take a beating. And that right front tire, especially at a track like this, is going to determine just how well you're able to rotate the center of the corner and be able to get the run off. I mean, for Eric Schaus, yeah, he's picking up spots right now, but when he gets up there inside of the podium and starts battling with Heisong and Teed, and if he can get up there to J.W. Miller, he's going to want to have something to be able to battle with. He may be using it all up right now.
We'll say, I'm just watching. Will, looks like Gary Corley just drove in the back of Christopher Bryan. Caution's out. Don't know who for. Oh, it's Brandon Gates.
It is Brandon Gates. Looks like he might have looped it again, maybe in 3 and 4, and is now on pit road. Ninth time today that the caution flag will fly at New Hampshire as Gates brings it down. Well, I was going to say to the attention of his crew, and indeed he does. I thought he was stopping short maybe and might be taking the left-hand turn to the garage, but he was just looking to find his pit stall. Let's go back and see what happened to driver 76.
Yeah, it looks like he just got a little bit loose in 3. He's really been pushing that bottom line and did a really good job of keeping it off the wall.
He tried taking the road course.
I said, that actually, say what you will, that was a really good attempt to keep it off the wall. Didn't even touch
Yes,
it.
it was. That was a very interesting angle there. By all rights, he should have pancaked the right side. You can see right there. I think he's got a little bit of suspension damage there on that on the front, the left front specifically. But again, you documented this earlier that he had already used his fast repair, so any damage he sustains from there on out, he's basically got to deal with it.
If I do have to say, there is one driver who I've really been seeing push the limits on that bottom line, and it has to be Will Roberts, where the Madman is pushing almost half the car underneath that bottom hash mark. That's where I'm seeing a lot of cars really get upset at. I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to keep that up for, but it makes it, A, very entertaining to watch, but B, it makes it kind of wonder if that's going to be a viable lane later in the race once it gets some rubber on it. It looks like Brandon Gates has made the decision to pull it behind the wall. He is done for today.
He's going to join A.J. Hobson, Matt Wagner, Joe McAdory, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, Jeremy Reed, Jim Brooks, and D.L. Lemon back in the garage area. That'll leave us with 16 cars on the racetrack, and I believe Elmer Joseph should get the lucky dog under this caution. Oh, actually, Najee Camargo gets the lucky dog, so 11 drivers will be on the lead lap. Yeah, Najee, bit of a messy start to the race, but sticking it out, and he may be leaving New Hampshire with a top 10.
And really, that's all you can ask for, to be perfectly honest. Obviously, with the race being like it was to kind of start us off, I mean, the guys who are racing now are, hey, some of the guys who've kind of played it safe, maybe weren't running all that risky, and are just trying to, hey, either A, get a good finish, or B, maybe they're mired back, farther in the field, but they have a lot of talent, but just haven't been able to show it. This is a perfect race, kind of show out your stuff.
Well, when we get back green, we will be at less than 60 laps to go here in New Hampshire. Appreciate everybody tuning into our coverage here tonight on FRN. These drivers will be off next week, but then we'll be back here in 2 weeks' time as they'll be getting ready to take the third green flag of the season at Phoenix International Raceway. We're going to go racing in the desert here for the F.A.R.T NDCar series. But right now, it has been the J.W. Miller Show. However, that caution, Matt, brings Charles Teed right back up to the bumper of that 20, well, not bumper, but the gearbox of the 22. He's got another shot at him here on this upcoming restart.
And that's the thing where Teed did a really good job kind of getting on his bumper there, kind of anticipating the restart. I think he almost kind of scared him a little bit, but the big thing is he just wasn't able to hold it in the one, and Miller was having all the confidence in the world, being able to put it wherever he wants. I think Teed really has to commit going in the one and make it stick, because Miller isn't going to really, I don't see him lifting in this scenario. So he's going to have to get creative here.
You mentioned about Teed saying over the driver's chat that he was going to send it. Was it maybe mind games from Miller, trying to draw his eyes into his rearview mirror going into turn one rather than hit his lift point?
Man, look at that. Woo! Oh, he messed up the restart, though.
Remember, Miller's the control car, so he can accelerate whenever he wants to, and I think he's trying to play as much mind games with Teed as Teed's been trying to play with him.
Teed's still within draft range here, but I'm not sure how much it's going to matter.
And Jeff Hysong has benefited on the last 2 restarts with Teed mistiming it, getting backed up into the 18. Jeff Hysong had a great run last week. We were talking about that this might be the year of Hysong. He was very consistent near the end of the last season of the Dark Horse Racing Series, and good strong start to the year here, looking for back-to-back podium finishes.
Oh, man. That's the most active I've seen that rear end of TB. That thing looked really out of shape going to 3.
And Eric Schaus up in the 4th position. We saw him send it on a number of drivers to make his way into the top 5. He's right there on the back of Jeff Hysong. He's bringing Glenn Lazan along with him. Oh, car on the wall back there. I think that was Will Roberts off of 2.
Just a love tap.
Just a touch.
But obviously, this kind of puts it in perspective for Eric Schaus. I really think Eric really has something for Miller if he gets up to him, but time will tell. Definitely, he's a little bit braver when it comes to sending it, though.
Go on board with him here. You see him up to 7th gear by the time he gets to the corner, and then downshifting it to 5th gear. Looks like it's going to be the lowest gear he'll go to, straddling that seam there between the asphalt on the bottom and the more worn-in asphalt on the top side. Running in the same exact line as Jeff Heisong right now, and you can see that that dot just up there going into turn 3. That is J.W. Miller, who's back to trying to lay down Q laps and pull away from second place Charles Teed, who's kind of gapped himself back to this brewing battle for 3rd.
And it's just, I will say, some of his driver visibility is one of the weirdest things where most tires really throw you off sometimes, and it almost restricts your vision almost down to a tunnel.
Do you think that that might have been why we ended up seeing some of the contact in the early going of drivers kind of, sending it a little too hard into somebody else's left rear tire? They just weren't, because of that tire visibility there out of the right front, not able to gauge exactly how much distance they had between them and the car in front of them?
Sure, it was a little bit of a factor, but main thing stands, obviously, you kind of need to be aware of your surroundings, and while you can't exactly pinpoint the front end of your car really perfectly in any car, you can kind of guesstimate where it's going to be, and I would say, at least for early in the race, I'd kind of take a little bit more conservative and, say, hey, I'm not going to push this hard until I actually know where my front end is. Like I said, it's a difference in mentalities, though.
Gary Corley, Nicholas Winook, they've stayed on the lead lap the entirety of this race. Those two were closed up just moments ago for that 9th position. Now a little bit of distance. Corley in possession of the 9th spot. So a little smoke there in the back straightaway. Don't know who that was for. And it looks like Thomas Shannon McConnell in his debut. Looks like he is going to finish 16th, maybe 17th. He just recently brought his car back into the infield.
Yeah, it looks like that smoke was for Will Roberts. He's been kind of getting a little bit, I can tell Roberts has been kind of experimenting a little bit. He's been playing with the throttle, and he's been kind of, you can tell he kind of wants to let it loose out of the corners, but he's just not confident enough that it's going to have the grip to stay underneath him. So he kind of, I think he's a dangerous one as we get later in the race. He gets more confidence.
Oh,
caution's out.
And I was just about to say we were getting ourselves into another long green flag run, so hopefully I didn't mentally jinx it. It's Brian Wright has looped it off of turn 4. He's got it facing 90 degrees the wrong way against the inside wall, and definitely need a caution to fly there because there's no way that he can get that thing turned around without backing it up into the racing lane.
But he definitely tried his best, kept it off the wall, but unfortunately it looks like he was a little bit too close to the wall to kind of gas it back up and just ran out of room.
Started this race from the tail end of the field, making his first start of the season. Running in the 14th position, 4 laps down, but soldiering on, and gonna at least get a top 15 run here today, it would look. Let's go back to turn 4, take a look at what happened to him. This should put, well, we're going to have to double check on who gets the lucky dog, because I thought Elmer Joseph was going to be the free pass, but Brad Youngman, I think, passed him for the 12th spot to be the first car 1 lap down. So we'll get confirmation on that there as we take a look at the incident here for the 79 off of turn 4.
Yeah, it just looks like a little bit of just iffiness. And I think for a lot of these newer drivers, maybe drivers who are not that experienced with the IRO 01, this has definitely been an education day. You have definitely learned a lot today.
Well, you take a look at the upcoming schedule. We've already documented in 2 weeks' time we're going to be at Phoenix. But then you take a look after that. We got another off week. We go to Pocono, the Tricky Triangle. Then we go to Road America for the first road course start of the season. I mean, I'm looking at these tracks, and while they're going to be very entertaining for the spectator, oh my gosh, it's nightmarish for the drivers.
Yeah. It's gonna be an education. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
an education.
for both driver and spectator.
That's the thing. We're learning, and like I said, I think it's really comes with the toothing pain of a new car. It's a new car, a new mentality where, listen, the DW12 was, uh, it was a car that was more of a, hey, let's put it all in the driver's hands, but it's a lot more of a restricted car. The engines were a lot smaller. I'd say the tolerances were a little bit more forgiving in that car, and it was, while a little bit more on edge, it wasn't that refined. While the IR01 is just kind of jacked everything up to 10, and hey, we threw a bigger engine in it. We've made it a little bit more responsive and reliant on downforce. And when it loses any of those things, and it likes a perfect balance in between the both of them, or if something just isn't right for it, unfortunately, you're going for a ride.
Dare I mention July 23rd, when we take these IRO1 cars and put them at the Super Speedway of Daytona?
I don't know. I think I may have to. I think I may need to race that race. I think I got a good shot at that one.
um, where do I send your check if you don't survive?
Send my life insurance check. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna have to make sure your policies are up to date.
Now we all fun and games, so I hit that metal beam. Yay.
The metal beam of the car or the metal beam of the camera well up in the exit of pit road?
I don't know, but the two are going to be fused once I hit them.
They will be fused. You will be the camera well after that race. Well, we're
But
finally into the home stretch here, 2/3 of the way through this race. It'll be less than 50 to go once the pace car dives onto pit lane and turns it back over to J.W. Miller, who is he's got to have the cleanest windshield in this race. He's been out in front the entirety of this thing. Green flag ready to fly once again, and that time,
look at
that might have
T.
been, that was his best restart of the
Oh,
day.
send it, buddy, send it. Oh no,
Not quite able to get back to the throttle.
I mean, he could send it in the next corner,
He's
but you
within
got to
striking
commit.
distance.
I would brake early and try to get the lower line. Oh, it looks like he may have carried just a little bit too much speed. I think this is where he pulls away. It definitely looks like in turn 1 and 2, Miller slams it on the gas, tries to drive it off, but in turn 3, looks like he takes a little bit more conservative route, expecting T to overshoot that corner.
I think just based off of what I saw right there into 3, I think that T took your advice. I think he did brake a little bit earlier, but Miller sent it, and it stuck through the center of 3 and 4. That's why the gap increased.
And that may be a little bit of aero effect on that. And just surprising enough, we don't talk very much about aero, but I think that may have been just a pinch of aero effect on that just gave it just an extra bit of grip to stick.
Battle for third, Eric Schaus, Jeff Hysong. Ooh, Schaus almost got to the wall off of turn 2. Now looking to the inside of Hysong into turn 3. Just a confirmation, indeed, the 93 of Brad Youngman got the lucky dog under this most recent yellow flag. So we've got 12 drivers on the lead lap, 16 drivers still out there on the racetrack as Eric Schaus up into the podium for the first time here tonight since we took the green flag back on lap 1.
It's kind of fitting that thing is kind of painted up in NASA colors. That thing looks like a rocket ship.
It really does.
It just kind of keeps getting better and better, and I don't really know how.
Eric Schaus just ran his fastest lap of the race, as a matter of fact, at a 23.916. And that was while completing a pass around Jeff Hysong for that third position.
Charles Teed has been out-lapping, at least consistently been out-lapping Miller in the past few laps, so it looks like they're kind of on the same pace.
But it's not by much, is it? I think that last time by Teed was 1,000th quicker. This last time by 100th quicker. You're going to need a lot more than that to be able to reel in J.W. Miller.
I think it's the mentality, though, of, listen, if Teed can kind of stay with him, I mean, what kind of questions does that throw up in Miller's head? I mean, I know what kind of questions they would throw up in mine, which is like, man, I was pulling away from him earlier in the race. What in the world changed? I punched him hard. He got back up.
Oh, we got a car in trouble. Sheridan Wade. He's on pit road. Not sure if this is scheduled or not. I noticed him dropping down the running order. He was running, I believe, in 9th. before he dove onto pit road. We'll follow up and
Looks
see if
like
this is a regularly scheduled stop for driver 54.
actually looks like he kind of lost it going into one, popped the wall with the right front. Looks like it may have gotten a little bit of damage out of it. Didn't look like anything was broken, but obviously felt like something was off, so it decided to come on in.
Brian Wright also on pit road. Sheridan Wade does have a faster pair still available as we look at the battle brewing for 7th. Gary Corley trying to close in on Will Roberts and in turn hold off Nicholas Winook for the 8th spot. A little bit further up, there's a battle possibly going on. Jeff Highsong and Eric Peterson within about 0.3 of a second of each other for 4th place.
We'll say Highsong's kind of fallen off the last few laps. It doesn't look as confident as he did earlier in the race, but Eric Peterson's kind of got his mojo back. He's slowly trying to work his way up to Highsong.
Running a much higher groove there through 3 and 4, but to your point, could be to try and get clean air to that front wing, avoid the aero tightness, not run the same line as the car in front of you. You see him there about another groove lower through 1 and 2, and yeah, it looks like ever since Highsong was racing, oh, we got a caution. That is Gary Corley on the back straightaway. Look out oncoming traffic.
Yeah, it looks like. Oh, yeah. So he was trying. It looks like he was trying to send it almost like Will Roberts. It ended up just sending it a little bit too hard, went a little bit too low, and well, she wrote.
What a timing of that caution for Sheridan Wade. Had that unscheduled pit stop, did indeed take on his faster pair, returned to the track. He was the first car 1 lap down when that caution flew, so he'll be back on the lead lap.
Oh, man, some of these drivers are definitely getting braver. Where, I mean, they're kind of trying at least a little bit of the old style of, hey, we're going to kind of diamond the corner and take the lowest possible exit out. And fortunately, these cars just don't exactly like that kind of exit, but not for lack of trying. I could definitely see a lot more drivers getting comfortable with this.
We talked about this a lot last week at Michigan. When the fuel load gets lighter, the back end of the car wants to come around on corner exit. As we get closer to the end of this race, it's looking more and more like a lot of our front runners. They're not planning on coming to pit road after they made that one pit stop around the halfway point. Does the back end getting lighter, does that affect your ability to get back to the throttle on corner exit at a track like New Hampshire?
I really think it does. Where, I mean, these cars are kind of not in the fact of with the think of like the old 2009 through 2013 F1 cars where we had blown diffusers, kind of keeping that constant air moving underneath the car and keeping the pretty much the suction to the track. These cars rely a lot on active aero. So I mean, at speeds, the downforce will get better and better. At lower speeds, unfortunately, that downforce just isn't as working as well.
Interesting strategy playing out here under our 11th caution. Jeff Highsong, Glenn Lazan, they hit pit road and both elected to take on their faster pair at this point in time. They'll restart in 8th and 9th position. It'll be interesting to see if those fresh tires can work their way up here. I don't know if they can necessarily get up to the lead, but in the case of Highsong, he was 4th when that caution came out. Does he have enough time to at least get back up to that 4th position or higher?
Not exactly sure. We haven't really seen the huge divide between old tires and new tires. Obviously, I'm really kind of factoring in probably tire temps are what's going to feel worse here than actual tire wear, just because of the loads that we're putting on it when we go into all these corners. But I think this is really going to show if new tires actually matter that much, or if it's all track position.
Update on the free pass. Sheridan Wade was not the lucky dog. Elmer Joseph actually was. Sheridan will be the only car 1 lap down in 13th, so he'd be in line for the lucky dog under the next caution should we get one here. Looks like we're going to get a restart with about 30 laps to go, I would say. Still 16 drivers running at this point in time, although it looks like Brian Wright, he's got a pretty lengthy pit stop on pit road for damage repair. So we've got 15 of the 16 cars on the racetrack right now, but the 79 is still being scored in this race currently. Another restart here, another opportunity for Charles Teed, but Eric Schaus, who's been one of the most aggressive drivers on these restarts, he's lined up right there in 3rd place.
I said, Teed's getting bolder and bolder. All of these restarts. I think if he's really going to make a shot at it, now is kind of his time because I don't think Eric Schaus is going to give him the opportunity to kind of lay back here and get another shot at this.
Eric Peterson's now up in 4th. Will Roberts in 5th. Najee Camargo up there in 6th. Well done to him. Gary Corley, Jeff Heisong, Len Lazon, Nicholas Winook, 8th on back. Have fresh tires here for this restart, which is going to be with 32 to go. Oh, the top 2! Spin the tires! Miller's going to lock it up before he hits the wall. Teed almost lost it but kept going. Lost momentum, and Schaus, with the caution coming out for the 12th time tonight, is the race leader.
That shows you how quick things can change. I was kind of looking at that. I think Miller may have been watching Teed.
I think you're right. Very lucky he was able to get on the brakes and not hit that inside wall was J.W. Miller, but I think you're absolutely right. I think those two, they've been playing mind games these last couple of restarts, and I think they kind of faked each other out this time.
So what I actually think happened was Miller waited too long. Obviously, you have to go in the restart box. He didn't go in the restart box. As soon as he left it, it automatically called green and flagman started waving the flag. Miller got back on the gas, realizing that, oh, I didn't go. He started going. Teed hit the gas to start going too. And it just kind of worked out in the perfect storm where Teed managed to barely miss him. Oy, oy.
Teed dropped back to 4th. As mentioned, he didn't spin out, but J.W. Miller, who's led every lap up to this point, dropped all the way back to 12th. And now, the pole sitter, with less than 30 to go, he has lost a huge chunk of track position. Here's on board for Eric Schaus. Christmas coming early for driver 72. Look at this. Thank you very much. I'll take this race lead.
I think this makes the call easy if you want to get some tires real quick.
Oh, yeah. I'd be shocked if the 22 doesn't come to pit lane.
If I was Teed, though, I don't think I'd go to pit lane.
No, I don't think so either.
I think I'd save track position.
Yeah, he's in 4th place, so he didn't lose nearly as much as J.W. Miller, but Miller dropped outside of the top 10, so I don't see why you wouldn't come to pit road and get some 4 fresh tires if you're him.
I mean,
however,
might as well at that point.
He's still staying out.
Looking. Oh, he's diving in.
Yep, there we go. Yeah, he would have had 48 laps on those tires. Now he'll have
he has one car behind him.
Fresh set of Firestones.
How I see it is Teed has a bunch of cars behind him. He has one car behind him. So might as well swing for the fences. You've got about 25 laps once we get back going to cut through the field. Might as well have the best opportunity possible.
Well, it was looking like it was going to be the Miller versus Teed show here. But now, all of a sudden, the landscape has completely changed. Eric Schaus is now the race leader. Eric Peterson in 2nd. So it's the Eric and Eric show here with closing on 25 to go. Will Roberts back up in this in 3rd. Teed there in 4th. Now, the one thing I would be slightly worried about if you're Charles Teed is he's got the same lap number of tires as Eric Schaus and Eric Peterson. But that lockup there, the spinning the rear tires and that lockup to save the race car, that could equate to a couple extra laps of wear on his tires as opposed to the top 2.
I think it could, but I think that's kind of the dice roll that you're going to have to go here at the moment. Because right now, I don't foresee... I think the J.W. Miller risk is something that he had to take because right now he's in a really bad situation. There's really no upside to him. But for Charles Teed, there is a good upside where track position is going to come at a premium. You saw how long it took Eric Schaus to work his way back up from the back of the pack. I'm kind of looking at Charles or J.W. Miller in the same way, which is he's going to have to kind of cut through the field to hope that he can find gaps and not get in wrecks. Teed, I think, still has a good shot and probably just burnt up the rear tires a little bit, but I didn't see him lock him up. So I think if he can just cool him down, he can slowly start working his way through the field. I can imagine he can probably get by Will Roberts pretty easily. Eric Peterson may or may not give him some hassle. He's trying to get by, but Eric Schaus will be definitely the biggest thorn.
Keep an eye on the ticker and watch for that 22 on fresh tires. We'll see if he can work his way back up to the front with 27 to go. Eric Schaus, who
Look
was
at Will
third on the last
Roberts.
restart, he's now leading us into one. And Roberts, can he clear? Not quite clear.
Oh,
Caution's out. Now he's clear. Caution's out. Sheridan Wade's around up there in turn 2. Sheridan had, I believe, gotten the lucky dog this last caution, and he is now the most recent yellow. Caution
what in the
number
world?
13.
That was an interesting wreck. Huh. Got a little bit of assistance from, it looks like Elmer Joseph.
He's the last car in line. There's Joseph, the yellow car. And, yep. Gets popped in the back.
That was a very optimistic entry.
Pretty good contact with the right front there for Sheridan Wade, who we documented had already taken on his faster pair during an unscheduled green flag pit stop about 25 laps ago. Take a look here from the back end of the 54 and just how much speed difference there was between him and Elmer Joseph going into turn 1.
Well, I say, as you see the laps wind down, that desperation starts getting higher and higher.
And you know who hates to see these cautions late?
It-
J.W.
it-
Miller, because he can only, under each restart, depending on the length of them, can only pick up 1 or 2 spots. He needs a lengthy green flag run to be able to start picking them up and putting them down. The other thing I think that's a detriment for J.W. Miller as well, yeah, he's got the fresh tires, but the problem is, not only is this a track position track, we've already talked about that, you mentioned about Eric Schaus and his lengthy fight to get back up here to the front, but J.W. Miller has spent the entire race out in front. Aside from some lap traffic, he's not had to really deal with making passes, figuring out what other lines he can run. He's been able to have whatever line he chooses going into a corner for most of this race. Now he's got to change it up. He's got to kind of get used to what his car is going to handle like when it's back in traffic. I don't know if you can necessarily learn everything you need to be able to make forward progress in 23 laps.
I will say this car, and really any car, handles like a totally different beast when you're back in the pack. And I swear that as soon as you're back in the pack, this car drives the worst in the world. I swear it never turns, it never does this. And that's just how it goes, unfortunately.
Well, Eric Schaus coming off the runner-up finish last week at Michigan. Second in the points to J.W. Miller by 12. Might be able to, based off of him running in the lead, and J.W. Miller back in 11th. May be the new points leader heading into Phoenix in 2 weeks' time, but still, we've got 23 going on 22 laps to go here. Well, actually, off. Thought we were going to be going green. I thought I saw the lights out atop the pace car, and then they were back on. So I think they added another lap of caution there, potentially.
Yeah, looks like
Now
lights
the
are
lights
off
are
now,
out.
so yeah. Entering 1.
We saw Will Roberts very aggressive on that restart. Was able to get second place from Eric Peterson. See what he's going to be able to do here with Eric Schaus. Peterson back in third, teed there, still in this top 5 and fourth. Najee Camargo in 5th, and Jeff Heisong, by the way, on those fresh tires, he's up in 6th position, picked up a couple of spots on that last restart. We'll see if he can maybe work his way up here to the front. The difference on tires between Heisong and the rest of the competition, he's got 14 lap fresher tires than Camargo and Will Roberts. He's got 43 lap fresher tires than Schaus, Peterson, and Teed. We'll see if that's a difference maker as Schaus gets us back under green, closing on 20 to go.
And man, Camargo did not get a good restart. Heisong and Corley almost looked to jump on that.
Heisong will clear Camargo for the 5th position. Lazan looking to do the same for 6th. Can't do it, though.
Man, Miller is sending in these corners.
Here comes J.W. Miller up to 8th, getting by Gary Corley. Now sets his sights on Lazan for 7th.
Now, obviously, he's hoping that some of these guys kind of get out of the way, but at this point, I think you really just kind of need to put your head down and go.
Yep, and they're not obligated to get out of his way either. They're battling for position. All these drivers that he's catching up to are for spots on the lead lap. Next on his hit list as he's going to put Lazan in the rearview mirror. That is Jeff Highsong. About to move back up to 5th place. J.W. Miller on a tear as of right now. Eric Schaus and the rest of the top 3, they know that that 22 is coming. They're trying to lay down as good laps as they possibly can. Will Roberts running about a groove and a half lower through 3 and 4, trying to close up the gap between himself and Schaus. Little smoke there out of turn 4. Might have been Brian Wright in the 79, who is slow on the racetrack right now. On the front straightaway, running against that inside wall. No yellow flag, though. We stay green.
There's a guy who's jumping up and down saying that should be a caution. That has to be J.W. Miller. He's getting re-racked back up, and almost contact between Charles Teed and Eric Peterson.
Very close between those two there through 3 and 4 as they're mixing it up for the 3rd spot. There is Miller, top of your screen.
Oh,
Peterson completely overdrove the entrance to turn 1, hard into the outside wall, and the caution's out for the 14th time.
I'm not sure if Peterson was actually the reason for the caution.
Len Lazan is also, it looks like, potentially the reason for the yellow flag. Well, let's figure out who. Yeah, Lazan actually was on pit road before Peterson called the tow.
So looking at Lazan, it looks like it was really an optimistic move to the outside of Highsong and
contact with the tires. His left front ramped up the right rear of Jeff Highsong.
Now looking at the Peterson.
Green light's still on here at this point. And now the caution's out with his car stopped up in turns 3 and 4. So maybe, I think you're right, it might have been the stopped 69 up there in 3 and 4 that brought out the yellow, but.
And looking at Eric, it may just, I think it may have just been a thing of, I think Teed may have intimidated the wrong guy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it just kind of happens where you just get so caught up with the guy behind you. Maybe you miss your mark. Maybe you're just carrying too much speed, or maybe you think like, oh, let me try something different. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work. And it tore the whole right side out of that 36 car.
That car was in trouble as soon as he turned the wheel to the left. That back end was coming out.
There was no saving it. But fortunately, or more unfortunately for everyone else, J.W. Miller, that basically gives him a chance to re-rack.
It does. And he will be 4th on this upcoming restart. On board here with Eric Peterson. Watch this going into the corner. Just the slightest little turn to the left there. I don't know if maybe. Yeah, it's hard to tell from even from the in-car cam if maybe his left front hit that seam. Those 2 areas of the racetrack, those 2 differential areas of grip there in the corner, did it maybe hit the seam and slide the left front?
Yeah.
It's almost like the thing didn't turn, like the back end stepped out even before he had that thing turned to the left.
I mean, it stands to reason that it could have just been 2 different grip patches that he hit, but I think it may have just been, hey, look at the laps that we have remaining. Look at how he's kind of processing this. I could see the desperation of, I got to go and I got to go now. And I think it may have just kind of combined to make something even worse.
Well, Eric Peterson, the good news was he still had a faster pair available. The bad news was that wreck took place up in turn 1, at the furthest you could get, with the exception of the front straightaway from pit road entry, and he was not able to drive that thing back around, had to call the tow. So accounting for the amount of time it would take for the tow to bring him back to his stall before he could take service, he's going to fall 2 laps down. He'll then be able to take on the faster pair, but the damage, both figuratively and literally, is done. And that's such a tough break for a driver that was running up there in the top 5 really the entirety of this race.
But I said, I don't know. If you're the top three, you kind of already made your bed. You can't come down now and throw on new tires. I don't really think that's going to work here. I think we're in the stage of the race where it's not going to help. If you're someone behind, who was that behind that top five, I think I'd go down and just throw new tires on it just for the heck of it, because I'm seeing how that 22 is kind of cutting up the field, and I'm wondering, hey, is the 72, 31, and 5 going to fall off here in a few laps?
Glenn Lazan, he, I believe, had already used his faster pair. So his instant up there in 3 and 4. He's still on pit road, 5 laps down. Peterson returns to the track, but he is 2 laps down. We've got 11 drivers on the lead lap for this upcoming restart. And going back to your point about the top 3, kind of they've made their bed. Another thing is, too, if anything that we've learned from what we just saw there with Peterson and what we saw earlier with the kind of mind games going on between Charles Teed and J.W. Miller, if you're Schaus, Roberts, and Teed, you can't drive defensively against the 22, or else you're probably going to mess yourself up. You just got to run your line and hope that it's enough to keep the 22 at bay. Roberts sends it up there on the top.
Will has been one of the most brave drivers here on these restarts, and he is not afraid to stick it. Oh!
To the inside.
Is it going to stick?
Stay.
Oh, he had to lift out of it.
Oh, saw the back end wiggle there. That lost him some speed off of 4, and now he's got to go back to defense mode against Charles Teed, who's got his hands full with J.W. Miller. Schaus started to pull away. Ooh, I think the 22 jacked up the back of the 5 there through 1 and 2.
They gave Charles Teed enough of a love tap to say, hey, we need to get going. And he opened up the door for him.
Miller's there on the inside of Charles Teed. Can he clear him up off of turn 4? Yes, he's clear right now. Now sends it down into turn 1. He trying to fight back, but he just doesn't have the tires to do it. Now it's going to be Will Roberts who's going to have to deal with the 22 car, and he's only about a car length and a half behind Eric Schaus. Now he sends it in on Schaus into 3.
I think that was more of a defensive move to kind of keep Miller behind him, so Miller couldn't drive past both of them, but I don't know how long this is going to last.
Remember, we do not have overtime cautions here in this series. The race
he goes
could
even
end
lower.
under yellow. Wow.
Aye.
I think if we get around 4 to go and a caution comes out, the race would end under the yellow flag. We run only the scheduled distance, so there's still plenty of time for these drivers to race it up. Maybe a caution to mix things back up again for another restart. Tough break for Glenn Lazan. He's back in the garage area. Going to finish 13th here tonight. Another driver that was running so well, so consistent. And there is the caution. Sheridan Wade has looped it around on the front straightaway. The whole front wing taken off of his 54. And we're getting ourselves a restart with less than 10 to go.
I could definitely tell Will has kind of put him in a box. Will ended up putting put J.W. Miller in a box, but I'm kind of looking at this and saying, I have not seen anyone all day today run on the bottom line, like actually on the bottom line, and that's the first person I've seen run that line. I'd be scared.
Joseph Morales got a slight piece of that right there. Also seeing Gary Corley was involved in something. I thought he might have been in this same incident, but apparently 2 separate incidents. See if we can find out what happened to the driver of the 7. Oh, he was already on pit road prior to the Sheridan Wade incident off of turn 4. Oh, he went around off of turn 4 as well. This didn't bring out the yellow. And he got a pretty good shot into the inside pit wall right there. Wow, very lucky that thing stayed pointed straight and kept moving forward. Otherwise, we probably would have had a yellow. A lot of damage there to that left front suspension. Left front tire, the tether kept it at least attached to the race car.
I can't tell if these restarts are going to hurt or help Eric Schaus and Will Roberts, where obviously that it lets Schaus control the restart, kind of lets him decide when we go, and it does help bleed off laps here. We're at lap 144 of 150, and again it ends, so I think realistically if we get one more caution, that may be all she wrote.
Could be. I think we've had, what, 3-4 laps under pacing each time? I think it's been about 4 laps. pace laps under each caution period here. We still got lap machines as well. I don't know if that takes into account an extra lap of pacing or not. Looks like Eric Peterson may have taken a wave around here. So he is 1 lap down in 10th. I believe Elmer Joseph was the lucky dog. Oh, no, correction. Nope, actually, Eric Peterson was the lucky dog. So he went from 2 laps down to 1 lap down. Got 9 drivers on the lead lap right now. And we've got 14 cars still running at this point in time. It's going to be less than 5 to go here with this, I think we can safely say, final restart of the day. And Eric Schaus trying to be the second driver to pick up a checkered flag here in the debut season of the F.A.R.T NDCar series. Trying to do it here at New Hampshire.
I think of it like this. So, really what Eric Schaus needs to do is he needs to make sure that Will Roberts doesn't get the better of him on the restart, because Will really has these restarts down. Like, scarily down. What Will needs to do is he needs to make sure that he can try any way to get around Eric, but obviously don't leave them open for Miller just to kind of drive past both of them, because Miller's going to have more grip here on this restart. But the main golden rule of both Schaus and Roberts is they need to make sure they don't wreck together. If they wreck together, unfortunately, that's game over. They don't have anything else. J.W. Miller just needs to keep doing what he's been doing.
Exactly.
He just needs to drive.
For those who were wondering there, off of turn 4, did Eric Schaus lose count of whether we were going green or not? No, what he actually was doing, I believe, was gassing it up, slamming the brakes, trying to get as much heat into those tires as he possibly can for this upcoming restart. Well, here we go. This is for all the marbles. We're in New Hampshire. This is New Hampshire. This is for all the lobsters. I don't think they give lobsters out in Victory Lane here for the open wheel series, but maybe. Green flag set to fly. Eric Schaus.
Oh, Miller got a good restart.
Late. Oh, Roberts went to throw a block. Ooh.
He scared Miller just enough.
He did. He checked him up. Roberts really fishtailing there out of 2. Schaus, mirror driving.
Will
Roberts
they have him?
To the bottom.
Oh, I don't think it's going to stick.
No, it's not. He's still there, though. Will they be alongside each other? Oh, big wiggle, big save. 3
Will's
to
gotta
go.
send it. JW's coming.
Miller on the bottom. Going to have to check up in the center because of the same line
there
being
it
run
is.
by Roberts. Roberts clear.
Will's
Roberts
got
to
the
the point.
Now it's up to JW Miller if he can get by Schaus enough time.
The connection gremlins have come back for J.W. Miller there in a battle for second place. Schaus leaves the door open. Miller's got to send it here if he's going to have a shot, I think, at Will Roberts.
Oh,
and he slides it.
Will sent it deep, cost him just a little bit of time. Schaus ended up checking up. That puts Miller in second.
Will Roberts has that clean air to
Look
the
at
nose.
Schaus. Oh my
Schaus
goodness.
sending it on the top. Try to hold on to second. Miller still alongside. White flag in the air. I think that's all she wrote unless Roberts really messes up here. Schaus and Miller gonna battle for second. That car of Schaus, that was all sorts of slideways there on the top side of 1 and 2.
Oh, we're gonna send it here.
A couple more corners for Will. Schaus.
It's gonna be a drag race to the line.
Oh, almost contact, and Schaus is gonna hang on. Will Roberts is gonna win here at New Hampshire.
Attaboy, Will. I did not expect that one today.
Wow.
That's awesome for him.
I think Will Roberts may have run the highest and the lowest on the racetrack during the course of this event. And I think that might have helped him to be able to fight his way up through the traffic to the front. And how about that? Will Roberts from 5th place. An adventurous day here at New Hampshire ends in a W.
I will admit, that was a heck of a defense from Eric Schaus. And realistically, Will Roberts should be thanking Schaus here at the moment, because he was one of the key factors that prevented Miller from really getting the exit that he wanted. I think if Miller would have gotten that higher line a little bit earlier, he had a chance to track down Will.
Last week, a 10th place performance at Michigan. And today, he won for Will Roberts. Talk about early on in the season. The good finishes, the wins. It gained you a lot more in positioning in the point standings than later on in the season when everything starts getting spread out. So it'll be very interesting to see where Will Roberts will be standings wise, how far behind J.W. Miller he'd be for the overall points lead. I'm assuming J.W. Miller with back-to-back podiums, he'll still have the points lead heading into Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. But here is a look at the, well, I think it's safe to say, survivors here today as we take a look at the finishing results. And yeah, credit to Eric Schaus there. I mean, he got 50 lap older tires than JW Miller. He had the preferred line though. He had the outside line. He had the better momentum to the center off where JW Miller did not. I don't think the fresh tires helped him with that scenario. So the fact that Eric Schaus was able to keep JW Miller at bay and deny him a runner-up finish, that was very impressive by driver 72. And then he soldiered on all day long, holds on to that fourth spot. Jeff Highsong used the fresh tires late to get up to fifth. And then look at some of these guys here. You have three of those drivers that finish inside of this lead lap top 9. They were a lap down at some point in time. Camargo, I think, was 2 laps down at a point. Yalkeman was 3 laps down. And Elmer Joseph was a lap down. And they all finished on the lead lap inside of the top 10.
And I'm just kind of looking at it here. It was a great recovery by Miller, a kind of a good recovery by T too. He had the potential to lose a lot out of that. And just look at some of these names that we're having in the top 10 for the first time. I mean, Elmer Joseph, we have Brad Yoinkman. Same thing, like seeing Nicholas Winook doing good.
Yes, great run for him. I don't think that car ever fell off the lead lap. He was up inside of the top 10 the entirety
And
of the second half of this race.
we didn't really mention him too much, but he was always there, always fighting.
Eric Peterson, albeit a lap down, going to get a top 10 run here today. And then look here at the remaining drivers, and Gary Corley, Sheridan Wade, and Christopher Bryan. Yeah, they had their ups and downs here today, but they finished this race in 11th through 13th. Glenn Lazan was the last driver to finish out of the race as he had a good run going and was caught up in a late race incident. Brian Wright, Joseph Morales. I believe Morales actually was running at the end of this race as well, but he had early issues, had a long, lengthy toe, and so he was just kind of vulturing his way up into the top 20. A couple of drivers that had some first starts here tonight, Brian Wright and Thomas Shannon McConnell, and then boy, tough break for a couple of some heavy hitters that we probably would have expected to see up there at the front the entirety of this race. A.J. Hobson back there in 19th. Matt Wagner back in the 20th position. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, I think, is one of the big ones that jumps out there. Nunez, a former winner here in the Dark Horse Racing Series at New Hampshire. And also Jim Brooks. Remember, Jim Brooks ended up finishing runner-up here a few seasons ago in the Dark Horse Racing Series at New Hampshire. So a couple of drivers that have very good numbers at this particular track did not get the runs that I think they were expecting here this evening.
Absolutely. And I think we've got all three ready for an interview if you're ready.
All right, so let's see if we can kick things off with the guy that brings it home third place here tonight, coming off of his victory last week at Michigan. Let's see if we can dial up J.W. Miller. J.W., Matt, Rod, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Tonight, at least in the early going, looked a lot easier for you than the fight you had to put up to get up to the front late at Michigan last week. However, bit of a restart screw up there, dropped you way back there, and you had to fight and claw your way in the latter portion of this race to get back up there into the podium. I was bringing up the fact that with spending as much time out in front as you did, might not have prepared you for what you had to do to be able to fight your way back up towards the front of the field. Was that the case, or was this car just fast enough in traffic as it was out in clean air?
It was definitely fast enough for us in traffic just because, we were able to run that bottom line pretty nicely while everyone else was kind of up a little bit higher in the lanes there. But, yeah, no, the clean air was definitely king for this racetrack for sure, as it usually is here. But, yeah, no, had a little bit of a mishap with the restart. Started in the wrong gear, so that kind of screwed me up a little bit. Luckily, no damage though, and we were able to stay on the lead lap and just kind of worked our way back through and got a podium out of it.
Well, I said that was one heck of a drive. I don't think, besides that little blemish on the restart, I don't think you have anything to be disappointed about. And I one of the burning questions on my mind is if you actually managed to get around Eric Schaus just a little bit earlier and had access to that top lane, do you think you could have tracked down Roberts?
I think both of them were super fast. I mean, Chelsea was getting some really great runs out of the corner that, we were almost completely even. So even if I would have gotten around him, I'm sure he would have came back at me as well. So yeah, no, it was just really close racing between, the top 4 or 5 guys there at the end. We were all really close.
Obviously, you had a very strong car here tonight. You're going to be taking the points lead into Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. Another track that doesn't have a whole lot of banking on one area of the racetrack. So, is there anything from tonight's race here at New Hampshire that you'll be able to take and apply with this car at that upcoming track?
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting. If I can just take a look at the schedule here. Yeah, Phoenix. That's definitely another interesting track. I'm not sure. Are we running the newer version or the older
I think it's
2008?
the new dogleg version.
Okay. Yeah, then yeah, that should definitely be exciting in these cars for sure. Definitely, turns 1 and 2 now at Phoenix. Quite a bit like New Hampshire, so definitely going to be able to carry that. I always struggle in turn 3, so that one's going to be interesting. Try not to hit the wall there for sure. But Phoenix is another 1 mile track that I really enjoy racing on, so it's going to be interesting. Hopefully, we can get a few more green flag laps in. Hopefully, some guys can get in some more practice now that we kind of have an idea of just how difficult this car is going to be on these short tracks.
Well, great way to start out your season. Back-to-back podium finishes here. Congratulations on the job well done here tonight. As Matt Rudd said, heck of a drive there in the closing stages. Before we let you go, the floor is yours for thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Yeah, thank you guys as always for broadcasting the league. We got a great group of guys here. I think this race is not necessarily, it's the second race of the season on a really difficult track, so I think that we're going to bounce back and really be able to have a lot of good racing this season. But other than that, thanks to Team Watson Racing and Martin Sports for everything they do for me. And yeah, thanks to all the Dark Horse League admins for putting on a great league.
Strong car tonight, led the most laps, brings it home third place this evening at New Hampshire. That's J.W. Miller. Congratulations once again on a good run. Enjoy the off week. We'll see you in a couple weeks' time in the desert at Phoenix.
Thanks.
And let's see if we can dial up our runner-up finisher here tonight, Eric Schaus. Eric, it's the guys up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey guys, how are you?
I'll tell you what, you drove the wheels off that thing and then some in the closing stages of this race, trying to hold off those fresher tires behind you, but you had quite a mountain to climb in the very early going of this race. Rolled off the grid from third, a couple of drivers up in front of you spinning the tires. You had to take the faster pair on early and then claw your way methodically back up through the field, but up there when it mattered at the end. So we saw how difficult it was to pass here. Describe that adventurous journey from the start of this race up to the end.
Well, like you said, it wasn't really the best start. Pretty much put me at the back of the pack right away, and from there, no faster pair. It was just try and stay clean and let people crash in front of me, and use the attrition to just let me towards the front. And eventually, I got up there, and from there, it was I could start to race a little bit. I think I made a couple passes on track, which was nice, and yeah, I don't know. The cards just happened to fall my way. After a bad start, I got lucky and just started fighting near the end with some old tires and did my best to hold on.
Touching on that, you were an absolute madman on that last restart. I mean, obviously, you did lose position, the Will, but defending off Miller for really the last 3-4 laps on older tires when he was on new tires. How in the world did you pull that off?
I got lucky. I mean, the outside line was the strong line, so if you could send it in there kind of hard, as long as you didn't overshoot it too much where the car started pushing on exit, you could usually hold off the guy in the inside. And I think JW is being a little passive. Going into 3 is where I really got him on one of the turns. I think he basically passed me and cleared me. And then he braked early into 3, and I decided to just send it because worst case, I was going into the wall, and that was fine with me. So, risk reward, and it paid off.
We were talking about all the different points when it comes to New Hampshire Motor Speedway, lack of grip, tire wear, but also the fact that this is a rhythm track. Had a lot of cautions in the early going here, so how difficult was it, especially for a driver like yourself that had been relegated to the back because of that early issue, to be able to get into a rhythm to set up cars for passes, having so many cautions coming out and not a whole lot of green flag run?
Yeah, up until probably more than halfway through the race, I had no pace. I don't know where it went. I had bumped somebody and I thought I had damage. But I felt like I was barely keeping up with anybody. And then I don't know, 3/4 of the way through, that rhythm just kind of kicked in and I started feeling it. And I picked up a lot of pace, and that's what helped me start working my way to the front.
Great start to the season for you. Came into this race second in points. You bring it home second place here at New Hampshire. Going to keep that points battle for the lead tight heading into Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. We're looking forward to seeing the continuation of this saga between you and the 22. Before we let you go, though, the floor is yours for thank you, sponsors, and shoutouts.
Yeah, thanks to you guys at FRN. I appreciate the broadcast. I look forward to going to watch the second half at least. I don't know about the first so much, but second half for sure. Thanks to Dark Horse for putting on this league, and thanks to all the viewers out there.
That's Eric Schaus, second place here tonight. Back-to-back second places to start off the season here in the F.A.R.T NDCar series. Congratulations on the great run. Maybe we'll see you get one position better in a couple weeks' time in the desert at Phoenix.
I look forward to it.
And the point standings actually have been updated. Not much difference between the top two, just a couple of points separation now. J.W. Miller, 14 points over Eric Schaus. Will Roberts, the biggest gainer, though. He moves up to third in points, 25 points out, and we talk to him in victory lane right now. Will, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got y'all. How y'all doing tonight?
Well, we were talking about the fact I think you used up every inch of every turn here tonight at New Hampshire. We saw you up at the top, almost into the wall. We saw you on the bottom, almost on the apron. I mean, you were doing a lot of experimentation, but then, end of the race, when it counted, up there in clean air, able to keep them all in your rearview mirror. I mean, how in the world were you able to make those moves, especially on the inside line, and get it to stick? Because we heard just moments ago from Eric Schaus, and we saw it here during the course of this race, that top line was king, but you made the bottom work.
Well, I mean, there's speed to be had up at the top, but I felt like the bottom, like if you could diamond it right, the bottom was where to be. My issue was coming up off. I could never get the traction to try and get around folks down on the bottom. Like that was the only issue I was having. I ended up getting stuck back in lap traffic pretty early on. Well, not lap traffic, but back in traffic pretty early on, and just had a tough time trying to work my way back up.
So, Will, you were an absolute monster on these restarts, especially that last restart. How in the world did you time these so well?
I don't think it was timing as much as I come to find out towards the end. I was restarting about 2 years lower than most everybody else. I come to find out about everybody's in fifth. Meanwhile, I'm in third, and I'm having to be careful on the jump. But once I get it up into fourth and fifth, I'm golden. I'm off.
You were flying on those restarts. I was wondering what was going on.
Yeah, just a little bit more. Once the revs were up, it was fine. I felt just the initial launch when you're going so slow, it made it really easy to spin tires, and I think that might have been what caught some other folks out, was just having that longer gear and more time to spin the wheels up.
So early on in the season, getting this victory, you climb up 7 spots in the standings now to third, 25 points out. When I look at the low banking here at New Hampshire, it reminds me a lot of turns 1 and 2 at the track that we're going to be heading to in a couple weeks' time at Phoenix. With the strong run you had here tonight, what is the confidence level heading into that track in the desert?
Anytime we're taking open wheelers to a short flat track, I'm feeling good. Um, is not quite Milwaukee. I can't remember. Do we go to Milwaukee this season? I hope
I
so.
do not think so. We go to Gateway. I think that's the closest we get.
All right, but anytime there's open wheelers on a flat mile track, I'm feeling good.
Well, obviously, got to be feeling good here tonight in Victory Lane. Congratulations on incredible run here this evening. We saw you have to kind of work your way from the front to the back up to the front again a couple of times this evening, but up there, as mentioned, when it mattered the most to pick up this checkered flag. Congratulations. Before we let you go, we're going to hand the microphone over to you for some Victory Lane thank you, sponsors, and shout outs.
No sponsors. Want to thank my wife Britt for letting me do this. I want to thank Charles and Eric and everybody on the admin team who helps put this show on, and I want to thank y'all too for putting this show on yourselves. Y'all do a great job.
That's Will Roberts. He's your winner here tonight at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. He works his magic at the Magic Mile, and he'll look to carry this momentum into Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. But for now, congratulations. Go enjoy that victory, Will.
Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.
And that is going to bring our coverage to a close here this evening. Matt, I remember you telling me before we even took the green flag last week at Michigan, these cars are hard to drive. I think here tonight, we even heard it from the drivers. We are seeing that these drivers, they're having to go to school. They're having to learn on the fly what these cars can do, what these cars cannot do. The tracks are tough, and these cars being tough to drive, it's a combination where these drivers, they are definitely getting an education.
Yeah, and it's the thing of you may have think like the hierarchy, but every time a new car comes around, there is always the power shift of who's the most adaptable. And sometimes, again, some guys can just adapt to these cars better than others, but hey, some may take a little bit longer to kind of get that feel for it. And the big difference is looking at the two cars, and the engines are so different, the packages are so different, the tires work differently. Everything about these cars work a little bit differently than what we're used to. It's how quickly and how well can you adapt?
Next week, we're going to be off. Like some drivers are going to be very happy for the little bit of a vacation before facing the daunting task of Phoenix. Uh, mentioned the fact that you got the low banking over there in 1 and 2, but you brought up the dog leg. I don't think an open wheel car is going to attempt to use that dog leg in any way, shape, or form. I don't see that helping the
I
suspension, but
mean, I didn't think they'd use the bottom line here tonight, and I was
eh,
very
you
surprised
know.
later in the race.
That's a very good point. But I mean, some of the things that they had to deal with here tonight, do we see that maybe next week, the same type of thing? Or are they going to have to deal with an entirely different monster and a new set of complications, if you will, with this new car?
I think reasonably they'll be able to take what they've kind of learned this week and apply it towards next. Where yes, it will have to be a little bit delicate on throttle. The turns are a little bit tighter at Phoenix, or at least in my opinion, they're a little bit tighter. But it also comes with its own kind of risk of challenges. But I think that everyone in the field is going to kind of take this lesson here that we've learned today of, okay, well, we need to be a little bit more gingerly than we thought. And they also may take a little bit of, again, heard about what Will said, where again, he was restarting in third instead of fifth. Everyone else is playing a lot more conservative game. Hey, add in 2 weeks, some guys are going to get some extra practice in, try to get a better feel for his car. But when we finally get to Phoenix, there may be some guys who are willing to roll a dice a little bit more.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see with the combination of the speedway racing at Michigan and the short track racing here at New Hampshire, how drivers will approach Phoenix in 2 weeks' time. That'll be on May 21st. Excuse me, when we'll be continuing on this season of the F.A.R.T NDCar series. I got to remember to swallow before I talk. But we hope that you guys will join us for that. The green flag will fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. These drivers going to enjoy the off week. We'll be enjoying the off week and then be right back at it in the desert. But Matt, it's been a good one here tonight. An exciting final shootout here at New Hampshire. And I appreciate you joining me in the booth for it.
As always, it's always a blast.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed our coverage here tonight. Again, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time at Phoenix. Congratulations to Will Roberts on the victory here this evening. For Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of FRN, the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.